been what they were talking about.
It definitely 100%.
Is. When she got you with the clap, the applause.
Yep. All right, here we go.
Janet, was I a good singer? Did you hear how good of a singer I was?
When you made sure that it was on the recording, yes, it was very pretty.
Yeah. I have a voice of an angel.
Yeah.
God damn it! I was trying to think of the line now, where it's like a mixture of
Fergie and Jesus.
A mixture of Fergie and Jesus.
Janet says, "Ahoy, Renee, here. Andrew, which is Teresa. Andrew is Teresa. Teresa, yeah. Get your own fucking YouTube channel. Like, why do you do this every week? How hard is it?
Sometimes it is Andrew too, isn't it, Teresa? Like sometimes it's Andrew and sometimes it's you.
I don't know. I think
feel like sometimes that's Andrew.
That's Renee and Jim. I think Renee and Jim are usually both on here, but it seems like at some point, like Jim's on Renee's account or the other way around.
I don't know.
But
we'll know in a moment.
Teresa could make her own YouTube account.
Oh, do you see who's on there? Do you see who just popped in?
Howdy, ahoy, Grayson. Who's in here?
The LA Not So Confidential crew.
Hey.
Oh, is that Shiloh or Scott?
Dr. Shiloh, Dr. Scott. Could be both. Could be just one.
We were just talked about how we're going to talk about something that Dr. Scott sent. It's probably Dr. Scott, and he's in there. He's like, I need people to know. And by the way, I don't know what he said. I'm excited to hear.
I'm excited too. I'm really excited to hear what he has to say.
Mm-hmm.
It must be good if he went out of his way to email Janet. I mean, I go out of my way to email Janet too, but usually it's dumb shit. So,
Rena said it's not Renee, it's Rena, which you'd think Rena would be pretty easy for me to figure out is Rena. Also, I've met Rena and she has spoken her name to me. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Josh, is it man? Good. We're getting bigger and bigger.
Shiloh.
It's Shiloh was in here. Nice.
Hey, Montana. Yeah, this is it.
We're just talking about.
Right here.
Zach and I were just talking about setting up a live show in the Valley with.
Oh, there's Tad right there.
Me, Tad German. Great job. That's our buddy who came out.
Listen, MVP last night.
He was and he sat there and he got dad jokes told about him sitting with his wife and her friend. Yeah. Right in the front row through the whole comedy set last night. They're very good sports. Very good sports.
It was a good time.
And actually, I told them, Tad, I told your wife on Facebook that you guys, I genuinely appreciate you guys going because it made the room actually way better just having the three of you guys up there.
It really did.
And for the rest of you that are around the South Bend area and didn't come last night, go fuck yourself. How about that?
You missed it.
All righty. That ensures they're going to come next time. Way to get them to come next time.
Hey. Listen, they came. Tad's wife I gave her a free T-shirt. We got to have drinks with them, hang out. It was a good time to meet your hero. You know.
Oh boy.
I was talking about Zach.
No, you know better than that.
Okay.
Also, that was another Jimmy Pardo reference. If
you know better than that.
Mm-hmm.
Total Jimmy Pardo reference. Listen, as long as all you people are here, why don't you hop on over and give us a like on the YouTube.
Oh my God.
Go ahead and smash that like button. Go ahead.
Smash that like button. We only got 5 likes. There's there's like 50 people watching, 5 likes. That's 10%. I can do math. Come on, let's get that up to 30 likes. Smash the like button.
What is wrong with you?
Please just hit like so that you don't Bob doesn't spend 10 minutes like he did one day trying to get people
to I need all of you to like it. It's real easy. If you're on a mobile device, just close the live chat, hit like, go back in the live chat. Boom, we're up to 9.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's follow-up. Thanks so much for joining us.
If you're watching a smart TV, lower left corner of your screen, hit more actions, more options. Go into reactions.
Did not think we would make it to 10:30 without actually talking about the case. But thanks for smashing that like button.
We are up to 24 likes. Ignore Janet. 60 people. 28 likes. We're up to almost 50% now. Come on, everybody. There we go. 30 out of 62.
I'm so torn.
30 out of 60.
I want them to do this, but I hate what it's doing for your ego right now.
We've now crossed 50%. We have 32 likes with 60 watching. However, we did just lose 2 watchers. The percentage is going up, and it's not because of more likes. It's because 17
of less people. Dislikes. Interesting. This is very interesting.
Listen, you can hit dislike. The algorithm reads it all the same. Doesn't matter. Like, dislike.
They just read it as activity. Yeah.
Activity, right. So we got 36 likes with 62 watching. We're well over the
Did you feel me check out on that
50% mark?
Did you feel me check out on that? I was really checked out on that.
I was too busy watching the numbers.
and respected it.
37.
I would have got my phone like Becky and picked it up. And
Hannah
started
said
looking
to
at it.
hammer the like button, hammer that like button, smash the likes, everybody. What's up, guys? Isn't that how every YouTube video starts? What's up, guys? Every YouTube video I ever watch is some dude going, "What's up, guys? It's so here with another video for you. Do me a favor and smash that like button and hit the subscribe button." And sometimes they're really fancy. They got like a little like bell, little pop out of like ding. Hit the notification button.
Thank
so
you, Dr. Shiloh. I
when I
appreciate
create
that.
new contact and when I go live. I'm just here for Zach's shirt.
Yeah, damn right.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Nice shirt. Oh, okay. Let me see. Are we ready to get started now? That doesn't work for you, Bon. See, I'm not going to get shit for calling Rena Renee if you're going to call me Bon. 7143. Okay, we're well over 50%.
Jason wants you to unbox something. Good call.
I unboxed a new incubator for my quail eggs yesterday.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That's exactly what you should have waited to do. What's up, guys? Today I'm going to be unboxing a quail incubator. You feel? Smash that like button.
That's it. The new one that does 120 quail eggs at a time. I could hatch so many little baby quails all at once. Somebody posted on the fan page yesterday, and admins ended up taking it down because it was gross and because Holly's pregnant and it was grossing her out. But apparently, if you penguin eggs, if you hard boil them, the yolk or the white part stays clear.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not, but there was a picture of it. So I'm gonna need some penguin eggs now.
Okay.
Well, I think you've had too much Black Barrel coffee this morning. Black Rifle coffee is what you meant to say. And and we're out of Black Rifle coffee. I had Starbucks Pike Place roast that I made here at home this morning.
Joanne wants to know how the kittens are.
What were you talking
question.
They're about to go to a shelter, or we're gonna eat them or something because there's 3. Listen, to take desperate times. There's 3 kittens left. 3 of them have gone to their new homes. 3 of them are left. I can't figure out how to get rid of them because I was like, well, I'll put them on Facebook Marketplace. Like my friend circle has been tapped out, but Facebook Marketplace won't let you do an ad for free kittens. I don't know what else to do.
Well, don't send them to a shelter.
I'll send them to you.
I mean, I guess my dogs would. No, that wouldn't go well. Wait, what about your favorite? Is that one that went away?
No, the favorite is still here.
Oh, you're not sending your favorite to a shelter, and you can't send the other 2 there either.
Listen, it's the only option at this point is either the always kill shelter or so if you don't take these kittens, that's what's going to happen to them.
Taking a turn.
No, so there is a shelter in South Bend that does rehoming and fostering, and it is a no kilter.
Oh, okay.
So they supposedly if you give them the kittens, they will find a place to give away the kittens.
Got it.
So
okay.
I think that's what we're
different.
gonna end up doing because it got to the point where mom's kind of like they're completely weaned. Mom is like we'd let her in every once in a while. She'll like come into the garage, but we have to keep the garage closed now because they wander and I don't get hit by a car or wander over to the neighbor's English Mastiff.
Yeah.
So my garage smell stinks. I've got 3 kittens that are wandering around. They're climbing the screens and the windows, like they're ready to fucking go. And I can't open the door to my garage, so they got to go at this point.
All right, YouTube people, I'm ignoring Bob, so I'm just going to talk about. You guys can keep talking about your cats. I'm just going to talk to the YouTube people while you guys keep talking. So, if you guys want to see any of the stand up, I have a little bit on my Instagram. If you go to my Instagram, it's Z to the Q on Instagram.
Nice.
I got a little bit on there from last night. So
I do not of mine. I was going to because Zach filmed it, which I didn't know, but he filmed it. But then I was like, well, I'm going to use that bit at my show in Obsessed Fest because it went well. And
Janet, did what I say about filming it make sense when we were talking yesterday?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
He's like, why would you film it? I'm like, what? Why the fuck wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't think it was weird. I just didn't know that was the plan. But yeah, I didn't know it wasn't a plan. Like, I don't know why you would do it without filming it. It's weird because I'm so prepared in other areas. And in this one, I'm just like, I just got like the vibe off the crowd. And I know
Thank you, Grayson.
What works and didn't work. So I'm just going to. But I can't make the cool social media post like Zach did because I don't want to put the bit that people are going to see at the show out for people to watch before I go do the show. So I didn't share it. Janet didn't hear any of it because she was busy
I'm
on the
so
phone,
sorry. I was reading that.
You patrons will know why that's funny.
I'm sorry. You're going to have to repeat everything you just said.
Thanks, but she's had a very good life. It's what's happening in the chat? That's
We got a 17-year-old. Amy has a 17-year-old kitty who's getting ready to move on, and I've been there. Mine
across
was
the
16
Rainbow
and a half.
Bridge.
Yeah,
Rainbow Bridge. I didn't know what that meant.
It just means cat heaven. Yeah, I've been there.
Huh.
Many of us have.
Sorry about your kid. You could replace it.
Yeah, that's a great life though. 17 years is.
Yeah, that's great.
That's an amazing
any
life
of you that are in the Midwest at all, like what's a quick little trip up to Southwest Michigan? You get a free kitten, meet your hero. I'll give you a T-shirt with the kitten.
No, don't bury that. How dare you toss that to the side, hoping that it'll just go into people's unconscious. For some reason, I felt like I was going to meet my hero.
I feel like Bob's my hero now. I don't know why. Something happened. All right, are we ready to start this show? I need a social media manager. I have one. Kelly does all my social media. I don't do social media.
Yeah.
Love you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe punch him in the head a couple times, but
yeah. As I said, I mean, how many of you can go to bed at night with 87% charge still on your phone? That's somebody who doesn't like social media right there.
Mm-hmm. And a very high horse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm up on my
Shiloh,
list.
you're not allowed to side text me. I can barely focus on the 8 things I'm supposed to be doing already.
Yeah, no, that's not fair. If you got shit to say, Shiloh, you got to put it in the chat like everybody else. And with that, we're going to start. Are we ready to start the show?
Do we know how? Do we still do this?
I don't remember.
Fair.
I don't remember. As someone said, I'm just totally preoccupied and preparing for conferences that I'm mailing it in on the podcast anymore. Do I sound bitter? For people's shitty comments? No.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's start the show.
Let's mail it in. How dare you?
Go fuck yourself, person who said that.
Okay.
I did a wonderful intro, by the way.
I assume.
Wonderful.
I assume you
know
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I assume you did. And I sang you into the intro very well, I thought.
You did.
Here we go.
Jesus Christ. I'm done.
Here we go. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Those of you that are on the YouTube Live. Got a big crowd today in the YouTube Live. We even got Dr. Shiloh in the house in the YouTube Live. Thanks for joining us. And speaking of which, before we get into anything else we got going on, Janet informed me right as we were hitting record that she has a special message from Dr. Shiloh's partner in crime, Dr. Scott, who you said emailed you about the Jessica Henry interview.
Yeah. I didn't know it was coming, and I was so excited to get it. So if you're listening to this and it's been a second since you thought about that Jessica Henry the Jessica Henry interview, please feel free to go back, revisit. But I really loved his input. I think he was actually listening to our follow-up as well, not just the interview with Jessica, but the follow-up and some of the comments that you all had and our discussion about it. He says the obsession with Javier's sexuality, which actually is also very relevant for this week, is grossly misdirected and disturbing, completely unprofessional, even within the context of the time of the interview. From a clinical perspective, it's more reflective on his own internalized homophobia and likely place on the Kinsey scale. Love that analysis. Kinsey scale, for those of you who may not know, that's sort of a range of, and Shiloh, correct me if I'm wrong, although now I'm looking at this email, so I won't know if you say anything. It's a scale of sexuality. It's a scale of sort of straight to homosexual, and the idea that was established by a Dr. Kinsey, who did a ton of research showing that many people fall somewhere in between. It's not just all one and all of the other. And so I think Scott is suggesting that perhaps he could have an interest or fascination in all of it. Could be, perhaps he has a little something going on there and is uncomfortable about that and is sort of deflecting and putting it on other people. I don't know if that's a mischaracterization, Shiloh. Hopefully it's not. But he also says, I did not see warmth. And I know we talked about this in the chat last week. I did not see warmth. Saw a lot of smarm and condescension. This detective already has a theory, and he's trying to pound the puzzle pieces into a form that he has decided upon. And then finally, what is the pattern of the interview? If he was trying to throw her off for some reason, I guess I could understand. Is this just gross incompetence? because he's sort of all over the place and doesn't seem to be tracking what the conversation is, and at best maybe he's trying to keep her on her toes. But not a fan. He was not a fan of this interview. However, he is a fan of the podcast and all of our wonderful listeners' contributions. He says y'all are rocking it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Scott, for the input. And I know we had a ton of people. Is there more, or is that it?
That's it. Yeah, that's it from Dr. Scott for this week. Loved it.
Yeah, I'd say that I think I had said last week that to me, like, it seems like at that point in the investigation, that LeClaire, in my opinion, somebody wrote in and said, I think that he's so focused on Javier because he's desperately trying to clear him. I don't get that vibe. I get the vibe that he's trying to come up with a scenario in his mind where Javier is guilty, because I'm guessing he caught on to some of the inconsistencies between what he says he's doing and the friends say they're doing and stuff. And for whatever reason, I think he thinks that Javier is guilty. And the way he must have figured that out in his mind is, well, it must be something to do with the fact that he's gay. And so he keeps trying, because Dr. Scott said it perfectly. He's constantly trying to wedge this weird narrative into the context of like every interview. And we heard it again this week.
So do we think that maybe the theory is that Becky is going to out him, that Becky knows and Becky's going to out him, and maybe that's the detective's theory of why he keeps asking everybody if Javi's gay?
I don't know. Or like Dr. Scott said, it's possible. Some people, I think, some jokingly, some not so jokingly, on the fan page have mentioned like, well, is like LeClaire gay? Why is he is he? And from what Dr. Scott says, almost like he's maybe somewhere on that scale and has some interest or fascination. I don't know, but it's super weird. And like we said again this week, we hear it again.
Well, in this week's interview with Bo, Bo seemingly finds it comical at the beginning when he's like,
it's so uncomfortable to have an adult authority figure like just sort of hit you with that. I felt like his laughter was also just like super discomfort. Like that's the last thing he thought he was going to be asked about, and was like, this is a super weird way this is going, which is kind of how we all felt listening, I think.
Well, and to me, the strangest part about it is he says it to everyone, and everyone says, no, he's not gay. And he still insists. It's a weird, I don't get it. He just continues. Like, I think he's gay. Seems like, and then he's like, a lot of people seem to think, no, they don't. Yeah, no one said that. No one has said that. Every single human that your dumbass has talked to has said, no, he's not. Like, who are these people? These lots of people.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm ranting, but it doesn't make any sense to me.
No. I mean, there was a great series of posts on the Facebook page, a thread that everybody was commenting on that was very much of that that attitude, like, what? No, you could sort of hear us all collectively reacting as that episode dropped, and we were all like, oh no, now a lot of people think this.
Right. And by the way, we've heard every single fucking interview that he's done. So I don't know who, except for Nick Crumbs, who's, miraculously dropped out of the police file.
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up, because it was this total toss aside comment, but I thought it was really funny that he was like, I've talked to hundreds of people. Like he uses hundreds of people, and I did want to just mention that and go, I'm sorry, have they talked to hundreds of people? He's
talked to tens of people. I think is what he meant to say. He's talked to tens of people. Before we get into questions, Zach, because we haven't even talked about this, what was your kind of take on Bo's interview?
There's a lot of spots in there that he talks through. He just kind of talks in circles where he pretends, I know it was a big issue on the fan page this week where people were like, oh, they're white supremacists. Well, he never really says they're white supremacists. Right. He says Christian has white supremacist leanings, but like doesn't say, he's like, well, he's not really white supremacist. He just kind of feels that way. And he's like, and I hear Robert's racist, but he's got a half black girlfriend, so I don't know. Doesn't seem very racist to me. I mean, he literally says that.
And I think in both instances, wasn't kind of like I've heard.
Yeah, I've heard. It was very rumor related, which in this case, that seems to be everything right now. Everything's rumor related.
Well, and before you move on from that, I'm sure, Janet, you have questions about this, but I think I want to address it up front.
It was going to be the first thing I talked about just because everybody is talking about it. So,
yeah. And I even had people like emailing directly, like through the contact form on the website that are like, why would we? I don't want to be a part of helping to get a white supremacist out of prison. Like, why are we doing this if he's a white? A lot of listen, people. Here's the thing: they're not, and I say that pretty confidently because number one, you've got Bo saying he kind of heard this and it kind of seemed that way. What you had is a couple of white kids who both had their heads buzz cut.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you take and some people, there were some people on the fan page that disagreed with my kind of take on it, but I'll give you my take on it. You have him saying, I heard basically there's this rumor that they're white supremacists. We don't know who the source is of that rumor. I'll give you 3 guesses who it is, where it comes from. But then, so then it's not like I blew it off. I took that as like, okay, well, let's look at their actions. We already know Bo said that Robert's girlfriend was half black.
Mhm.
If you understand what white supremacy means, it's like people that literally think like the white people are the perfect race and anybody that's not white should be, and a very extreme view is they should be exterminated and certainly not procreated. Well, after that girlfriend, Robert's wife now, who actually chimed in on the page, is also first generation Mexican. Christian's wife is also not white, the same girl that he was dating at the time. And to be honest, I don't want to speak because I should have asked her because I don't know what her ethnicity is, but I know it's not white. And they have a child together. They're still married. And like I said, Robert's wife even chimed. She's like, "What? Like, how is he? He's not racist or white supremacist. He's married to me,
Mhm.
and before me was his mixed race girlfriend. They've never and he's talking about how he heard things from Robert Christian's friend Javier,
Yeah.
who's Hispanic. Like there's literally no evidence that either of these two guys are in any way white supremacists.
Yeah. Even what he said when he says Christian's white supremacist, and he's like, well, is he white supremacist? He's like, well, he kind of acts like it. You know, he thinks he's better than other races and he thinks he's better than other people. You're like, well, maybe he's just an asshole. That doesn't mean he's a racist, you know, like he just thinks he's awesome. Like that's really more than being a white supremacist.
Right. Yeah, and it's very, some people drew the point, and I agree with them, that like them based on how they look and assuming that they're white supremacists is not real different than the way looking at the way Damien Eccles looks and assuming that he's a devil worshiper.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, but the thing is, this is not like a theme. There's not like a bunch of people saying this. We've never heard this from anyone else. It's just all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I had heard from someone, or I've heard that they're white supremacists or racist, but there's zero evidence supporting that. And like literally the way they've lived their lives and the choices they've made for who their companions are
Mm-hmm.
is the exact opposite of being a white supremacist. So hopefully that sets some people's mind at ease.
So before we move on, I still want to keep talking about something else with this interview.
Okay.
At the end of it, he says it numerous times. He repeats it. He says, Javier knows. Javier knows. Javier knows.
Mm-hmm.
You need to talk to Javier. Javier knows. I mean, he's beating that to death, and the detective just doesn't seem to care.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he even uses the word, I know there's stuff he hasn't told me and hasn't told you. That's a direct quote that I wrote down because I thought it was interesting. As we talk about that, can you just clarify, do you know what prompted this interview? Because it seems like this is the same day he interviews Alex, right? So is it the Jessica Henry interview before
Jessica's
that?
interview
like,
was
what prompts this?
I don't know. That's a good question. Because yeah, they talked to Alex on the same day. So I don't know if they're just like, it seems like the case maybe sits on the case file sits on the desk for a little while, and they're like, oh, we should do some work on this case and do some follow-ups. Or I'm trying to think if there was anything in Alex's interview that would have prompted them to circle back to Bo. I'm not really sure what prompted them to do this interview again.
Because it's
or to
weird that
re-interview
he
him.
had just talked to Javi a week ago, and if that's a coincidence.
Right.
I'm just curious about that for all those reasons. I think that I think it's a double whammy of talking about white supremacy in the same context as talking about being violent, being interested in Molotov cocktails, fire, etc. So that definitely, those two things coming as a 1-2 punch, I think really got people concerned. So do you want to address that part too?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, we're going to get into that, some of that stuff when we get into, the case against Robert and Christian, but that part of it does have, I don't know about the Molotov cocktails, but but like their interest in like guns or fire or whatever, like that has legs. It does. They're into that stuff. It's just kind of, it seems like the culture of the family and the people they're around, they're into that stuff. But I don't think that has anything to do with being racist or white supremacist or anything like that. But yeah, like there's pictures they found off of their computers and stuff of them with, like posing with a shotgun or posing with a rifle and fires, stuff like that. So I don't know all those details because we haven't dug into the case against them yet, but I know like that part at least has some legs.
So one part that I call, and I want to talk to you guys about this because I don't know how I feel, and I don't want to know how you guys interpreted it. But in the interview, we're talking about them being violent or physical towards women, but he never actually says that. He says they're physical towards women, and then the detective kind of asks what that means, and he's like, well, he doesn't like knock them out of the way in the hallway, but they wrestle with girls and stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean,
we got a little bit of that when Robert was talking about him and Becky.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people are trying to use that as they are, violent towards women, but is that what he's saying? I don't really know how I feel about that. Cool. Thanks.
Are we
guys.
both? Yeah, I was going to say.
Asking a question? I don't know if you were asking a question or giving a
He says he doesn't know how to feel about it, and he started the question by saying, "What do you guys think about that?" Yeah, I don't know. The thing with respect to what he said, I know for a fact that this is how they behave with girls, or at least one of them behaved that way with girls. I guess I'm
sorry. I just occurred to me to help Kelly out. Can you just make a start whatever you're about to say as a kind of a clean response to what Zach said, so she can clean that up?
Okay. So with respect to their treatment of women, or what Bo said he knows for a fact, I think were his exact words, they have done or behaved around women by being somewhat violent or being rough. The thing that concerns me is that while he doesn't say this, I don't know why he knows that for a fact, and I don't know that isn't something that Javi also might have told him. The problem is that we see Javi telling so many other things to so many other people and constantly proving to be the source point of the information, and I just don't know. For all I know, he could have said, and I know for a fact that this happened, or Becky had a bruise, because we've heard that story before. I don't know where I just don't know where that's coming from. And I get concerned because he's very careful to say he knows it for a fact, but does not in any way volunteer why he knows that or anything like that. So I question that. But I will say, by the way, that everything we're talking about, also reminds me of, conversations that have been had in the past about Austin. And so we need to treat those things equally. If we're very concerned because of the stories we hear about Austin, we need to be equally as concerned with Robert and Christian, or neither, but just want to make sure we're being even-handed about that. Also, Shiloh asked, what did Austin, Javier, and Jacob go on to do with their lives? Shiloh, I believe Javier is a prison guard, like a corrections officer. Austin went into cybersecurity for a minute, and then maybe also does something with, I'm not sure. And then I don't know about Jacob. Does anyone?
I'm not sure about Jacob either, but that's accurate with Javier and Austin. In regards
he might be in cybersecurity too, but don't quote me on that.
In regards to like being even-handed about the stuff said about Austin or the stuff said about Robert and Christian, like 100% agree. And that was some of the conversations I was having on the fan page. I'd asked somebody who very clearly like believes Robert and Christian are guilty. I was like, based on, they took like what Bo said, that he heard or his impressions or whatever, and they're like, well, obviously, look, if they're into this and they're into that, they must be. I was like, if that's fair, but if that's the weight you're going to put on what Bo said about them, then I think we also need to use this same litmus against the stuff we've heard about Austin. And they didn't, matter of fact, they never responded to me. They didn't want to have that conversation, but it's also, there are some differences there too. And I'm not saying in the fact that what we had this weird, like kind of ambiguity with what Bo's saying, right? Anything we've heard about, like oh, I heard they're white supremacists and Christians kind of white supremacy, I think is what he said, or this or that, and they're into the Molotov cocktails and they're like rough with women, I think, but they, you have that, and then on the other side, the stuff we've heard about Austin are like very specific, like Jessica Henry telling this is a very specific story that happened to me that Austin did to me. This and Alex and Nick Crum talking about the incident at the mall. It's not like, oh, I just heard. It's like, no, he came up to me and said, do you want me to take care of her because you know what happened to the last bitch I didn't like?
Right.
So I'm only telling you that to say, like, if it seems like my interest is more perked about that than the other, has nothing to do that one's Robert Christian and one's Austin. It's just like these are firsthand real accounts of very specific instances where things happen, as opposed to this like big broad, I think they're this because I heard this and I can't give you any examples to support it or back it up. So there's still like a pin in it. It's in the back of my mind. I haven't like dismissed it, but I'm just, it just doesn't quite hold the same weight as, though this happened, like I've seen this happen with him personally, is very different than, oh, I just heard that this is kind of a thing that maybe they do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, again, we haven't gone into the case, the true full case against Robert and Christian, which people have been asking about. I know Jill had asked about that on the follow-up post. When are we going to find out more about that? I think you said in a recent follow-up that you were aiming towards trying to maybe get into that soon. So perhaps we'll hear more specific points in relation to that stuff once we get into them a little more deeply. But yeah, so let's get into some other listener stuff. Would love to hear what you think about this the idea of the family, the Friedleys, having some growing happening of weed. What did you guys think about that, Bob and Zach?
There's my problem with, like, it's certainly interesting and would be a huge factor in victimology. The only trick is that we have no evidence to support it. They didn't find any marijuana plants at the house. Now, to be fair, if it was being grown in the house, you may not have evidence of it because the house burned to the ground.
Right.
But typically that would be done in like a basement, and there was no basement in this house.
It just seems like it would be easier to grow outside, though.
Right.
Especially at this time. I mean, the supplies aren't as readily available as they are today.
Right.
So it seems like it'd be easier to grow outside. And like you said, there's no evidence of that. Or if someone was to go up there, it seems like there would have to be a lot. They're not going to go up there and murder 3 people for a few plants, and in my opinion.
Yeah. And so all I could think is if they were, it would have had to have been like back in the desert behind the house or something. But it's just one of those things. Just like the stuff about Robert and Christian. It's like it's something they said, something I'm not forgetting about it, but I can't move forward saying, oh well, that's to add to victimology. They're growing pot when I have no evidence that they grew pot. But stuff does track. Like we heard Bo say, we've heard a few people now say that Becky always had the pot. She was the one that always had it. She was the one that always bought it. And we have the fact that she only worked 2 days a week at at Denny's, and she had all these bills. So it's something to think about. But I have not seen any evidence that there was a grow actually going on there.
Okay. I just want to acknowledge, since we did sort of get into all of the white supremacy and violence and violence towards women, those sorts of rumors or conversation in Bo's latest interview. I want to just acknowledge Kate and Jennifer. I want to acknowledge Claire and Chandler and Marie. Just a lot of conversation about that, in particular in the follow-up. So I just wanted to give you shout outs, let you know that hopefully we sort of got into as much as we can. I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the future in the case against Robert and Christian, your concerns about that. I also wanted to just point out Chandler and Claire and Marie had an interesting discussion about sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Kelly, feel free to cut that out because I was just looking at the wrong series of names. Related to that, Sierra, Jesse, Megan had a conversation in the follow-up about Sierra's concern. She actually was feeling like she didn't really care for the way Bo talked about women. she felt like he seemed to never say anything good about any female, that the girls at Nick's party were just a bunch of trashy girls talking about his ex being a stupid bitch or something along those lines. He seemed to be very hateful towards women and others. It made me wonder about the veracity of his statements about Robert and Christian. That was just something that, you know, she says she could have missed something, but that was a feeling that she kind of came away with, was like, you know, maybe he was being truthful. As you said in the beginning of your episode, in the beginning of the follow-up, Bob, maybe you said, you know, you did say, I felt like he wasn't trying to conceal things, and that he was being truthful. But I guess the thing that I would add to that, if that's true, like, that's his truth, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a fact, especially when you start talking about behavior of women and his perception of that and stuff.
I maintain, and maybe Dr. Shiloh will chime in. She's in the YouTube chat right now, what she thought, but I maintain that this seemed to be a very honest interview to me. But being honest doesn't make you a good dude, right? So like, he could have been being honest, because I caught some of those vibes too. That you know, anytime he was talking about a woman, he had some kind of shitty things to say about them. But that to me, that doesn't make it any less truthful. It's just like kind of goes to my point that he's not trying to conceal anything. He's just, you know, sharing the fact that maybe he's a bit of an asshole towards women. Also, he, you know, I feel like there's a little bit of maybe trying to match LeClaire's energy too. Not that, you know, he's necessarily, you know, disrespectful to women or anything, but it's kind of that macho guy type of thing that he's got going on. But yeah, I felt like I still feel like it was a very honest interview, but that doesn't mean that, you know, he doesn't have any flaws, and that certainly seemed like a flaw to me. I don't know what you thought, Zach.
No, I agree. I do think he spoke very ill of a lot of women in this conversation. He did kind of speak well of Becky in a few points. He even came to her defense a couple times,
Absolutely,
saying that he believed, you know, so we had some of that in there.
Yeah, Montana, I know you mentioned that in the chat, and you're absolutely right. He was one of the few people in early interviews, especially, that I think many of us felt like he was, you know, like sensitive and reflective, and seemed to have, you know, hold her in high esteem when we were not hearing that necessarily from other people.
Right.
Just a couple of questions about phone calls, pings, call logs. I know we don't hear, because we have 80 other things we're all juggling, have the call logs up, but I'm sure someone in the chat does. Chris points out, Chris W with a K, that's Chris with a K, says, Bo says when approaching the Friedlies Monday AM, neither him nor Javi knew what to expect. And the call records don't indicate Javi called his dad until 2:30 p.m. when Senior called Junior. Is that weird? You have a direct line to info and you don't even make a call. Is that right? Again, I'm not questioning it, other than that I don't have the call log in front of me. Did he not? Do we not have an indication that he spoke to his dad before?
I think there were some unknown numbers that we think might have been his dad calling him, but even still, at that point, the DA's investigator probably hadn't been to the scene yet. So, you know, his dad, you know, we assume just because his dad's connected to law enforcement in Riverside County that he has all the info, and he very well may not have had the info at that point. So, you know, we don't know that he was a source of information. I also want to point out that Dr. Shiloh did chime in the chat and said, agree, makes sense, which I think that basically means that I'm a psychologist, and that I have everything figured out.
Huh.
Maybe that's not what she meant, but it seemed like. But no, she's. I assume she means she agrees what I was saying as far as like the veracity of the interview.
So another thing I picked up in this interview that I want to jump in real quick with is the fact that LeClaire seems to really want to discredit Nick Crum. He's done it in multiple interviews now. I mean, do you have an opinion on why he may be trying to do this?
Well, think about it. He's trying to discredit. I got the same vibe. That's a great catch on your part, because he's definitely had multiple times you hear him making comments about like, oh, it didn't impress me. Just a bunch of stoners and, you know, whatever.
Well, and in this interview, he even says, "Well, Nick get fired."
Yeah,
like,
so I'm coupling the fact that he seems to be kind of trying to discredit Nick Crum with the fact that Nick says that he went to the sheriff's department and gave a statement to police that is miraculously not in the file, not the recording, not the transcript, not a report on it. That seems to be dropped out, and that he's trying to. And I found another. By Friday I'll post it, but I took a screenshot of a report from a later date when there were interviews done where the I think it was Harvey or one of the cold one of the cold case officers that took the case years later says that Nick Crum was interviewed by police 2 times in 2006, again in 2007,
Wow.
plus the 2015 and 2016 interviews.
Wow.
It's literally says that right in the report. So when Nick says that he was interviewed, there is confirmation in the file that he was, but those don't exist.
That's
So
not
I
a
don't
good
think
look.
I don't think they liked what Nick had to say. At least at some point in the investigation, they didn't like what Nick had to say, I think, or it's just a weird coincidence. But especially when Nick tells us that no, he wasn't with Javier that night, that story is bullshit. It's pretty interesting.
Well, I guess the best way to avoid speculation on that would have been for them to just include the information in discovery. So,
right, exactly. And I'm sure you're gonna. I hope I'm not interrupting a great transition you're about to make. Into Is there? No, I was not.
It's all you, buddy.
I just realized I said that the Nick's whole thing about the alibi. Do you have any questions where people point out that here Bo says he was hanging out with Javier that night?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think there's definitely general chat, not just in the follow-up post, but on the Facebook page in general, about the inconsistencies with Bo and what he says he was doing and not doing. There are people who feel very strongly that Bo's right. He didn't really get asked about his actual exactly what he was doing in that first interview. That was a little more off the cuff by the police when they didn't know anything and didn't know what to ask. That he said, yes, he said sort of part of what he was doing, but no one ever pressed him on like the full activities of the night. So I think my sense of people who listen to the podcast is that there's sort of like some people really believe like, yes, that he has fully alibied Javier. That with a phone evidence just means Javier's off the table. And then some people still feel like they can't quite pin that down.
So I want to be clear and first point out that I think Javier doesn't need his alibi because I personally am still, unless somebody can show me different, I think Javier's phone records alibi him from being at the scene when the fires were set and when the murders happened. And I don't think there's any way around that. So I'm not saying this to say that, oh, this means Javier is guilty, but to me, it means Javier's lying. And it appears that he could be. And yeah, in the first interview, they didn't go through, give me step-by-step details about what happened last night. They didn't do that. And he doesn't say I wasn't with Javier. That's also correct. He said, I was hanging out. I think he said I hung out with Nick after work. Doesn't mention being with Javier. But what he does say 12 hours after the murder or 15 hours after the murder, what he says in that interview was, I was supposed to hook up with, and I should grab the quote, but it was to the extent of paraphrasing, I was supposed to meet up with Javier and go see Becky last night. And for whatever reason, that didn't happen. He very clearly, and that's the part that's important to me, that in that first interview, 15 hours after it happened, he's asked what he did last night. And he says, I was supposed to go see Becky with Javier last night, and we didn't. That's important to me because as I've said before, I think that if Javier were to have any kind of involvement in this, I think that the extent of his connection to it is that he knows what happened. I don't think, and that's just, and we're still in very much information gathering stage. I know I keep saying this. I'm not even, like, a lot of people are throwing out theories. If you've noticed, you haven't heard me lay out any theories because I'm not even close to having a theory yet. But as I'm just looking at what things we can eliminate, in my mind, Javier being at the scene, participating in this crime is eliminated for me. Unless something new comes out. I'm always open to new things, but that's eliminated for me. I don't think that's the case. But I can't eliminate the fact that he knows what happened and that he knows who did this. And there's indications, like, Nick also says, and Nick said this before he heard Bo's interview, that there was something. Now he may have it wrong. He remembers going to Denny's or whatever, but whatever it was, he remembered they were supposed to go see Becky with Javier that night, and it didn't happen. Bo said the next morning, I was supposed to go see Becky with Javier that night, and it didn't happen. And then the coupled with the phone records, it sure seems like Javier knew something was going on there. But I guess that's a long answer to a short observation. But yeah, in this interview, he says he was with Javier that night. I always tend to default back to the original, the ones that happened closest. And it's certainly fair for people to say that he wasn't asked for details. So when he never said specifically that Javier wasn't there, but he also never said at the beginning he was with Javier, and he did say that he was supposed to connect with Javier and see Becky, and that didn't happen in the original interview. Here we're 8 months later, and he says at the beginning of the interview that, oh yeah, I just talked to Javier a week ago, having not heard from him. And I'm not even saying that I don't think in any way he's trying to cover for Javier. But I think that, as you like, memories are malleable, particularly if, Bo has nothing to do with this crime. So there's no, has no reason to hide or really commit a whole lot to memory. And if he's chatting with Javier, and it could be as simple as Javier like, oh yeah, remember we were doing, we were hanging out smoking weed that night. And Bo could be like, oh yeah, I remember, because there's plenty of nights that they did do that.
Yeah, but he goes out of his way to sort of, I don't want to say throw Javi under the bus, but he says plenty
That's
of other
fair.
things that suggest that he wouldn't necessarily be interested in taking Javier's word about what happened that night, because he's implicating him in all kinds of other ways.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I think he's being honest. I don't think he's like taking Javier's word. I think he just had a very malleable memory of that night, and I think my impression of what he was saying is that he used the term, it was his truth. I think he believes that's what happened that night.
Right. I would agree with that for sure. And listeners, maybe you feel the way I do. There's just been so much mix up about what day things happened and other things that we can't corroborate, like Bo saying he was on the phone with Becky that same day, and Bo saying that, he thought he got off at 8. He thought he got off at 10, and that was that was like 12 hours after he got off work, roughly. But he was wrong about when he got off work. And so I just worry that I feel like I can't put any stock in it, or I can't put as much stock in it, just because I'm like, well, maybe he's thinking about Saturday night. Maybe he and Javi said that they were going to go visit her at Saturday. It's just that feeling of like, what do you take and what do you leave behind when there's so many inconsistencies across the board?
So I kind of go back to like I said, it's something that I just can't eliminate because of what's out there. If it was as simple as Bo's interview, like Bo's first interview where he says he's supposed to hook up with Becky or with Javier and go see Becky that night, didn't happen. If that was all it is, I'd be like, it could go either way. Like, I really have nothing here. But then you have Nick, who says, yeah, we were supposed to go see Becky that night, and Javier didn't show up when we didn't go see her. And then you have the phone records where Javier is still calling Nick after 9:30, after hour and a half or more after he got off of work that night, when he says he was with them from 8 o'clock on. Right. Well, so like there are contributing factors to corroborate that segment. And that's why I'm honed in on that particular bit of the interview, because it seems to be it is corroborated by what Nick says. They could both be wrong, but then it also seems to be corroborated by the phone records. Bo does say he was hanging out with Nick. Nick does say he was hanging out with Bo, and Javier's still calling Nick at 9:40 something or whenever it was. So clearly they're not together. So you know what I mean? So yes, there are inconsistencies enough for you to question what Bo said. But what I'm doing with that and with everything else is gathering all this information and seeing, okay, what does mesh up? What does have something that can corroborate it and cement it? And there's a lot of these interviews and a lot of these timelines and things that we're able to just like take. It's like, he said this happened, but for example, Bo says, I got off work at 10:30 at night. Well, here's your timesheet. No, you didn't. You got off at 8 o'clock at night. So that didn't happen. And I think, all these different little things that you can like throw out, but then you have one like, we were supposed to get together and go with Javier and see Becky. Oh yeah, Nick said that too. Well, Javier said you guys were together. You didn't say we're together, and the phone records show you weren't together. So now that stays in. It's not one of the things that I'm like tossing out, because that's what we're trying to do, right? Is we're trying to filter through all the nonsense and the bullshit and get back down to like the basic facts that we actually know. And that's why a lot of listeners and at some point I'll publish those and go through all of them that are making these timelines, and they're great. And I think Caroline Can't remember your last name. I'm sorry, Caroline. But
I
she's
call her
one that
Caroline CP because I never know if I'm supposed to say people's last names, but I think it's
Yeah.
Cook Peltier. But that's like
Yeah.
off memory, so I could be wrong.
Yeah, but she's made an incredible timeline that she's adding to, and there's a
Yeah,
few
it's
other
great.
people that are making incredible. Listener Teresa is working through phone records for me right now that we'll be having coming up very soon, to be able to tie some of this stuff together. So that's what I'm trying to get at. Like everybody that's doing theories and everything, that's great. That's how we think through things. But for me, what I'm doing with all these interviews and all these statements is gathering all this evidence, gathering all this information, putting it together, figuring out what is unverified. Everything goes into a category. It's either provably false, unverifiable, or verifiable, and taking the verifiable segments and starting to put them together to piece together what was actually going on right now. And that's why to me, I keep saying the people that are like on board with this or whatever, it's critically important to me to keep getting more layers to put in that, because we have so many gaps and so many inconsistencies. Somewhere we're getting to the truth, and Caroline and Teresa and so many other listeners are doing such a fantastic job of gathering that information. And I think you're all going to be shocked at the end of this when we're able to put this together, like what we actually figured out. I always think of the wax on moment, by the way.
I don't think
9th,
it's wax
Cobra
on,
Kai
wax
coming
on,
back.
but we understand what you're talking
I
about.
said off. Wax on, wax off. I don't understand why I'm doing all this. And at the end of it, I'm going to, hopefully there's going to be a Mr. Miyagi moment. We're going to start throwing punches and kicks.
Right. Do you think any of the kicks are going to involve them going to Denny's on Sunday night? Because I feel like I sort of feel like we should toss that aside. I know Montana feels the same way. I really wish we had early interviews from Nick, because I believe he has the best intentions, but it's just so hard when the only time you ever hear that is in 2022.
Yeah. So that's
tough.
for me, that is in the unverifiable category for me. It's not provably false. We don't have proof that it didn't happen, but we don't have proof that it did happen. Mm-hmm. And we've got some indications that maybe it didn't happen. So right now that I have the trip to Denny's that night to see Becky is unverifiable. And that comes back to the malleability of memories too. If Bo was right in what he said, which there was a plan to get together with Javier and to see Becky that night. And that's really what happened. That Javier didn't show up. They didn't see Becky. And over the years, if that part is accurate, your memory, people don't think this is true, but it does. Your brain will literally fill in gaps where there's gaps in the actual memory. Will fill them in, and it could be as simple as Nick's, is filled in the gaps. That put that together with another time they went to Denny's or something, or the fact that he knows Becky wasn't at Denny's. And it has created a very real memory for him of them going to Denny's, even if they didn't actually go to Denny's. But I'm not willing to throw it out, but I'm keeping it as unverifiable.
Okay.
So as we speak about verifiable and unverifiable, this isn't location. This isn't anything. This is just a matter of an opinion right now. This is another time where we've heard Austin hates Becky.
Right.
Are we putting this in the verifiable? Because I feel like this is starting to pile up.
I think so. Jana, I'm curious what you think, but I mean,
definitely. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm happy to agree that I feel like it's been made pretty clear that he didn't like her.
Yeah, it's 100%. And some of it's not just opinion. Some of it's not just, I just got the feeling that he hated her. We're hearing from multiple people that he said, I fucking hate her. So yeah, when you have multiple, that's a consistency throughout. So yeah, I agree with you. That's a good point.
I want to bring up something that Sarah mentioned on the follow-up Facebook post, which is, she says, that's Sarah G. Bo started to say that they were getting into Nick's mom's, and then Leclerc interrupted him. Could it be that they weren't in Nick's truck that Monday? I mean, I guess, do we establish in the actual interview when someone says whose red truck is that, and someone actually calls it out and says that's Nick's, so boom, they were in Nick's red truck? Because I didn't notice that in the interview, but I just thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, it could be, but unfortunately we don't have the, I haven't tried to reach out yet. Maybe I'll try to see if I can track down Nick Coraline and see if he's willing to talk, because to be honest with you, I didn't catch that he started to say that he started. So they're saying he started to say, yeah, we got into Nick's mom's.
Sarah thought she heard him say that they were getting into Nick's mom's presumably car, but then LeClaire interrupted. So
Gotcha.
I don't know, but I don't know how that jives
good
with
catch.
the whose little red truck is that? So, or whose red truck is that?
Yeah,
But
and
you
that
clearly
could be
overruled.
that's a good catch. I can't give you a good answer for it right now. I need to go back and listen to that. But yeah,
Okay.
that is interesting.
Okay. Just pointing out, because I think other people said it too, that Nicole H is one of many who is just like weird. Like they know it probably doesn't mean anything, but they're weirdly hung up on how many times Bo talks about his photographic memory and that they left on Saturday morning at 8:11 a.m. 8:11 a.m. I think he just keeps coming up over and over again. Not so much that it means anything, but people are just like, why is 8:11
I
so
can
key?
I can see that, but that was in the first interview, right? That wasn't in this interview.
I don't know. The
Did he-
impression I can't. I mean, I've listened to this most recent interview like 3 times, so maybe that's just my brain is blocking it out. But it's come back up recently enough that I thought, oh gosh, does he say it in the second interview also?
I don't
Yeah, help
remember
me out.
hearing
I
him
don't
say it in the
remember
second
hearing
interview.
that.
Okay.
But in the first one, I didn't think anything of that because I can as soon as he said that, what I pictured is they were walking out the door. They were like ready to leave.
Yeah.
That I picture him looking at a digital alarm clock and seeing it was 8:11 and going, oh shit, I was supposed to leave by whatever.
Jill B says he
like-
said it in both. Sorry, just I knew
Okay.
somebody would weigh in on the chat. So
Okay,
that's right. I need to
yeah.
bring
So
it
I'll have
up.
to go back and listen to this one. But that first time I heard, because like I would totally do that, especially there's the affective learning process in your brain. Like when there's an emotion attached to something, it really cements it in your mind. So like
Mhm.
I picture like if I'm looking at a clock, I see the time, and that creates an emotional response in me, like I'm late for something, which is I think kind of the impression we got from that. I for sure will see that clock. Like I can, because I'm not remembering a time, I'm remembering something I saw. So when we said 8:11, to me, that seemed like he was staring. But it is funny that he says that he has a photographic memory, then he can't remember shit after that.
Oh, boy, gosh, you know,
You're gonna hear an interview you're gonna hear this weekend is another one where he starts off with, oh, I remember everything, and then 2 minutes later, I remember nothing.
Oh, God, every interview, I swear, every interview we listen to, at some point in the interview, I always think on both sides, both for law enforcement who should know better and for the people who are being interviewed who wouldn't know, just the idea of like, did you ever think that this was going to be public record, that this conversation that you had was going to be picked
Right.
apart by thousands of people? Yikes. Like, I wouldn't trade places with anybody. It's
I
tough.
do want to point out, Jason White in the chat makes a good point. He says that in the first interview that Bo was asked about smoking pot, which he says could be why he didn't mention being with Javier in the first interview, because he was that was when he was like, no, I don't smoke, and I don't know if they smoke, maybe they smoke, I don't know if they smoke. And so I think Jason, if I understand your point correctly, is that if what he was doing with Javier was smoking pot, and the cop was asking about smoking pot, and he was trying to avoid admitting that he smoked pot, then maybe that's why he didn't mention him in the interview. And I think it's fair. That's fair. I'm not saying that's what happened, but that's certainly fair.
I hear that. And now I just want to move into, Carl K, Matthew D, some other folks in Facebook, just coming back to this whole idea that, we are doing what needs to be done, and there is a lot of parsing of little individual moments in all these interviews, but that very much people are saying, appreciate it, know we got to do it, fascinating, there's stuff to be gleaned from it, but just aren't getting the feeling that any of these people had anything to do with it. Carl points out that Jacob and Javi, the way that Jacob sort of just, says Javi's the key, like if the two of them had something to do with it together, that behavior wouldn't make sense. That people talk about the growing outdoors and wondering if maybe Matthew wonders if maybe there is some connection there, or if not that, actually, Matthew keeps pointing back to the money. Like, could people have known, if it is someone in the friend group, could the idea of the word getting out that they're coming into some money be a part of it? But that there's just this sense from people of like, boy, could any of these guys actually be involved? Like, they're not necessarily feeling it, as you know.
Yeah. So this is what I'll say about that. Very well could be that they're not involved at all. someone mentioned, I think it was on the fan page today, I saw somebody pointed out like the Tara Grinstead case from Up and Vanish season 1, where they were like really honing. Yeah. Well, they were like really honing in on a certain group of friends that they seemed almost certain. Payne seemed very, very confident these people were involved. And then an arrest is made and it was somebody totally off the radar. And I certainly appreciate that. And I don't want to call, I know Payne. I'm not saying he did anything wrong. So I don't want to say it was a mistake, but to me, something I am trying to avoid and always try to avoid is not going down that path. To me, season 1 and Up and Vanish, Payne went too far. And I remember saying to my wife when I was listening to, because I was a listener of the podcast in real time as it was happening, remember like, oh man, he's really stretching, kind of almost accusing these people, and there's really no evidence of it, of doing this. And we find out that he was wrong. It had nothing to do with those people. So that's, that's where I think the trouble comes in. If we start saying, well, based on this, we really need to focus in only on that group because we must be right. So no, we're gathering information. We're trying to decide if they can be cleared. It could be they're not involved, and that's okay because we've never said they were involved. And I'm not even saying I think they were involved. I cannot eliminate a scenario where some of them, there could be some involvement. I said I haven't given a theory yet, and it's because I don't have a theory. Because you're not wrong. Like to say, okay, well, Jacob was mad and Jacob's phone records don't work out. So, Jacob and Melvin is weird the way he interacts with Javier. And then, and then there's Austin and he, I don't know how any of that could fit together. I know something's fishy, something stinks here. Could be something completely innocuous. But I'm also paying attention to, and we're going to hear some more of this too. Like when, we asked Jim, one of the reasons we had Jim Clemente on was talk about post-defense behavior. What are we going to hear? And we're starting to hear from Javier, like, right afterwards we heard like the wrecked his truck and stuff like wrecked his car and stuff like that, but it's like that he moved away. We're going to start to hear over the next couple of weeks what happened with Jacob and Austin over the next month. So we're going to start getting into some of that stuff to try to figure out what can be eliminated. I'm going to tell you we're probably a couple of weeks from wrapping up this friend group and moving on to a different segment. It doesn't mean that we'll never circle back, because we will absolutely circle back. But we're going to kind of wrap things up and say, okay, so who can be cleared and who, like, what do we have that people should maybe stay in the person of interest category while we move into the next thing? That's what we're trying to get to here. We're not trying to get to a point in this segment. And I know it's because we're 25 weeks in, it seems like we should be to the point where we're like narrowing down a suspect. Again, 3 victims, 2 defendants, several different groups of victimology. Like this case is going to take 3 times as long as any other case. So like if this was a normal case with 1 victim and say like Elmore Griffin, right? So like she's got a very limited circle of people around her from season 2. So we got 1 victim. We study her victimology. Who was she connected to? Well, there was the Ed angle, of course, and then she was in kind of this love triangle with Leonard and Angela. And then there was a couple of other people she dated. And so we were able to get through this part very quickly before we moved. In this case, it's just taking, what I'm getting at is don't mistake what we're doing now for us trying to nail down who did this. It has a lot more to do with still victimology, still information gathering, for figuring out who can be eliminated and who needs to stay on our radar as we move on.
Right. And just to reemphasize that when I talk about Matthew and Carl and folks like that, specifically Matthew, I hope I didn't mischaracterize what you said. You actually were saying they could be involved because of the money. So I wanted to separate those 2 things out. But people, like I said, I know that there are people who are saying, let's move on. These folks are not saying that. They're just kind of pondering through it with everybody else as well. And going back and forth the way I think we all do. Jennifer asks a couple things we haven't gotten to yet, but wanted to see if you've been about to make contact or rule in or out as true, rumor or unknown. Thoughts on whether there was ever any evidence at all about this idea of a Marine that Becky dated that Robert had mentioned. Did that ever go anywhere? Are we ready to?
We're going to get a little more. Yeah, we're going to get a little more on that. I don't know that we ever really pin it down, but we've still got, and Janet and Zach, the 3 of us have talked about this. It's tricky kind of navigating a lot of this stuff because we need to move on to another segment, another group. But there's all these like random things out there, right? So we have like the interviews with the sisters. I don't know where that fits in to a narrative that I'm trying to tell, but we need to get it out there, the information out there. And so we get a little bit more in that. There's also, let's not forget about Josh Aroney. We talked about him one time and haven't talked about him yet. He was interviewed by police and his phone records were pulled, but he was the one, like, we haven't even discussed him, but when Becky got off work at 4 a.m, she's talking to him, and he was the last person she was talking to on the phone on her way up the mountain the day she was killed.
Yeah, so that definitely needs to be touched on.
Yeah, and some of this is just me, as always, just trying to be very transparent with you guys. So I'm like, well, so where do I? It's like, why don't we just listen to these interviews instead of this? I had a very difficult time turning this into a narrative story because, as I said, it's like this spider web that goes in every direction. So it's like, well, I can't not, like, when do I wedge this interview in? I want you to hear it. I want you to know about it. So just so you know, those things are all coming.
For sure. Okay, great. Also, the same kind of question about the gang members, that kind of rumor. Any other rumors you feel you've nailed down? This is Jennifer. Nailed down as true, rumor, and likely false or unknown. She wants to hear your gut on this, given your experience.
No,
I don't know that you have anything to add to that, but
yeah, there's right now, no. I mean, other than the stuff that we've kind of already discussed, it really has I'm just, it's less about the limit, because there's so many things that are going to live in the unverified category forever and ever that may come into play when we get to a point where we're able to narrow down an actual suspect. But right now it's a lot those things that are living in the unverifiable category. So really right now it's more about what can I put into the verified category.
Right.
So you know what I mean? It's less, I can't eliminate a lot of rumor. So for example, the stuff in the trunk. Nick has a very clear memory of seeing that stuff in Javier's truck, but it's also the memory of that has changed a couple of times, but in both instances it was in Javier's trunk. And then you have Jessica saying she saw it in Austin's trunk. I can't say, oh well, Nick's wrong and Jessica's right, it was Austin. Right. I can't say, I have no way to verify that. I can't say they're both right, they both had stuff in their trunk, or they was in one trunk and in the other trunk. So that just ends up just living in unverifiable, that we'll circle back to if for some reason we're really looking closely at Javier or Austin, I guess.
Yeah. Lauren says, have we been able to track down Bo and reach out to him for his thoughts? And then also just a general question Lauren asks, is anyone else connected to this case listening to the podcast besides Nick that you know of?
Haven't tracked down Bo yet. I'm hoping to. As far as, yeah, I mean, I've had people reach out that have connections. I'm going to talk a little bit about that on Sunday.
Great.
That have connections to the case, that don't want to be named, they want to kind of stay anonymous. Certainly the convicted family members of Robert and Christian, they're definitely listening to this. I don't know who else. As far as reached out to me, the one that we've heard from that is like directly reached out has been Nick and Nick Crum, and haven't heard anybody else that people that we've like spoken about so far.
Okay. Another person just wanting to touch base about Josh Aroney. Go ahead.
I gotta pee real bad. I can't think. Just give me just a minute. I'll be right. It'll be super fast. I can't answer another question.
You better hit that clicker. Poor Kelly.
So bad. I've drank a liter of water and a cup of coffee while we've been sitting here.
Oh,
sorry.
Good, because I can go back through the chat, and Zach, I know you pay attention to it too, even though you're ignoring Bob right now. It is, y'all. It is so hard to track the chat when so many of you are saying great things and all of this and my questions.
Nothing. I drank 2 liters of liquid.
Here we go. He's yelling at me now.
Yeah, all right. Okay, I'm just reading through the chat. Poor Zach. Love you, Zach.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you, Janet.
Yeah. Yeah, this is hard. This is, the more people participate, the better the chat is and the better the follow-up is. Yet,
it's been great.
Everybody you have to remember, I am also looking at a sheet of paper. I'm also trying to listen to what Zach and Bob are saying, and I'm trying to listen to the chat, read the chat. It's a lot. It's just a lot. So I feel really bad. And at half the time, I end up saying something, and then I look down, and someone has already said it, or Like, I was worried about Matthew, and then I looked down and Matthew was like, actually, was also saying all of the things I said. And then then it seems like I don't know. Anyway, this is hard.
Dr. Shiloh said that Dr. Scott is the same. He's the one that's always going to take the pee break. So at least we know they have that in common. He's the smallest bladder out of everybody I know.
That's not a small bladder. I just showed you 2 liters of liquid that I
But
put.
why would you do that?
Because I don't know.
Like if you're sitting down to record, like why would you do that?
I'm going to fill in the
Enough
blank.
said.
Good answer. And
Enough
good reason.
said.
Oh.
So you were starting to say something about
I was, but I just have to quickly
Ernie.
shout out Dr. Shiloh, who says this is a great cops versus firefighters moment.
Hang on.
Firefighters never develop patrol bladders like cops.
Right. That's true.
Right. What were you
All
saying?
right, so let's click for Kelly. All right, you were about to say something about
Just people still wondering about Josh Ernie.
yeah, but so you have to say that clean because the whole bathroom break didn't happen in the audio.
This is where I go rogue and you hate it because I'm like, now Bob, question for you. We also have some people who are still asking about Josh Ernie. Is it Ernie?
Mm-hmm. I think,
just
yeah.
wondering if we're going to hear more about him or from him.
I literally just talked about that
You
30
did?
seconds ago. Were you looking at your phone?
Probably.
I
You actually
I did a
name
whole-
dropped Josh?
Yeah, I did a whole
fuck,
spiel
okay.
on Josh. I said
Sorry.
he was the last person that talked to her.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were talking about, yeah, I definitely didn't hear you say Josh. And in my mind, you were still talking about Javi being the last person who talked to her.
All right, so cut that out, Kelly. Janet's very unprofessional. She doesn't know what she...
Everybody's discussing your
It's
bathroom
been
habits.
real hard to keep up today. Real hard to keep up. Okay, then the only thing that I have that is not related to this case, but thought we would end with as a call to action is that today is Sandy Melgar's birthday. And it would be lovely if people reached out to her. Obviously, she won't hear about it necessarily right away, but also just a reminder that you can still participate in looking out for Sandy, trying to weigh in and call to account the prison and some of its treatment there of prisoners there. There is a lot of information about that on the Facebook page. Valeria actually wrote and has since already received word back or response from the prison. And then Valeria even posted a template for writing letters that's on the Facebook page. So I just wanted to give her a huge shout out for keeping that front of mind and encourage people to be a part of that as well.
Yeah, and Valeria and several other people have shared letters. Like they've actually received written letters back from the prison. So they are listening. And the big thing is that they know that people are watching. I think that's very important for them to say, like, if you mistreat this prisoner or these prisoners, that there is an army of people that are going to hold you accountable for it. And I will say I appreciate TDCJ like actually having someone respond to the letters.
Yeah, I have not heard anything, so I was impressed and glad to hear that someone heard something.
Yeah, so they're starting to send those letters back. And again, yeah, Sandy's birthday. By the time this airs, it will have been 2 days ago. The 7th was her birthday. On Wednesday, but yeah, I mean, and if you want to send her a nice letter or contact, and that goes for anybody, Jesse Eldridge could always use a letter too. Anybody, if you get a chance, go on our website, truthandjusticepod.com. There's contact information for everybody that we've worked with. And if you're on JPay, you can send them. It's super easy through JPay. You can send them like an email that they and then print out as a PDF.
Just remember not to send any cards because some of us thought that a letter-shaped card was maybe going to be okay if it was thin enough, and someone just received it back after like 3 months.
Yeah.
And was like, "Oh, I'm an idiot. I totally forgot. You can't send cards, even if they're in the same shape as a letter. Like that's on me."
Yep. Just letters. JPay is great, and even like Jamie Snow from season 7, like. They actually have tablets where he can like email you back and forth. Like you can send him a message and he can message you right back sometimes too, through Connect Network, I think is who we talked to Jamie through. Letters to the prison, letters to the inmates, particularly Sandy, who's kind of going through a rough time, and it's her birthday. Do any of that stuff. And with that, I think we're we're about to wrap things up. I'm kind of scrambling because I'm in the morning. I'm leaving to go to Kansas City for the Generation Y 10-year anniversary party. I'm super excited about that. By the time you guys hear this, so that'll be over with. I'm doing that. We've still got Obsessed Fest at the end of the month, and I want to let you guys know too that the episode on Sunday, I hope that I've found the sweet spot for the best of both worlds for this episode. The episode's going to be like an hour and 20 minutes long, because what I did is I have about 25 minutes of a narrative episode where I'm breaking down police reports and breaking down the interview that we're going to hear, and then playing the interview at the end of it. So for those of you that just want to hear me hit the highlights and don't want to listen to it, you can turn it off after about 20 minutes. You'll hear all the basic information. For those of you that want to hear my breakdown and want to hear the actual interview, you'll have that. If you don't want to hear me talk and only want to hear the interview, you can just fast forward to that. I don't care what you do, but you have lots of options. This week's episode is going to be the final chapter for now. Excuse me. And this week's episode is going to be the final chapter for now on Austin Alba. He was contacted again. I mentioned to you guys that there was an interview, there was music playing in the background. And by the way, I've had listeners reach out that are like sound engineers and audio engineers that are like, I can try to clean this up, offer to do it. I finally, after talking to my attorney, said it falls under what is called the incidental inclusion exception to the copyright laws, meaning because it just happened to be playing in the background, that it's okay. So I'm playing the interview. It's kind of a tough one to hear, because it's not only is there music, they're sitting on a dock and there are like boat motors tootling by and different things, so it can be a rough one to hear. Unfortunately, I know especially a lot of our and I have heard you, and I'll try to start doing this, people from different countries that have maybe different accents and dialects have asked if I could post the transcripts before the episode so they could read along.
Yeah.
And try to start doing it. It's tricky because I can't schedule that, and so I don't want to like put it the transcript out on Saturday and everybody start talking about it on Saturday on the page when the episode doesn't air until Sunday. But I'm going to try to work getting those up much quicker. But unfortunately, this one there is no transcript, at least not that I have in my file for this interview. So you're going to have to either just take my word for it on the breakdown or listen to it yourself. But a lot of options for this Sunday. I think it's super, super interesting interview. And with that, I will thank all of you on the YouTube chat for participating, all you listeners that wrote in. Zach, Janet, wonderful job. I think Zach's had enough of me for today.
Are you kidding? It's just such an honor to podcast with my hero.
Okay. All right. We'll talk to you guys next week. Stop on our audio. Fucking asshole.
That's right. I was thinking about when he said, "Hey guys, if you guys want to listen to me for 25 minutes and turn it off," I'm like, that's what I do every time I listen to Bob.
You get 25 minutes, then I'm turning you off. YouTube live people, thanks for joining us. Dr. Shiloh, I'm so excited that you were in here.
I know. We got little Shiloh and Scott. Woof. Spoiling us.
That was great.
Shiloh said, Janet, you are the glue to this circus.
Clearly.
And then I said, I wish.
Super mean. Don't like Shiloh anymore. I have a great. Grayson says, Bob, you're cool. Thank you, Grayson. It's about time somebody recognized that.
I think he was just trying to be nice.
Nicole loves snarky Janet. Well, if he's trying to be nice, then it's YOU''RE Grayson, like that.
Oh snap! Snap!
I don't know why people think I'm an asshole. All right, YouTube people, we're going to shut off the live stream.